Morning, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting of the NMU Board of Trustees to order, and I would ask Secretary Andrew to please take the roll.
Trustee Young,
Present.
Trustee Hart,
Here.
Trustee Fatante,
Here.
Trustee Sepinen,
Here.
Trustee Holmquist,
Here.
Trustee LaPointe Dunham,
Here.
Trustee Lindberg,
Here.
Trustee Toutant.
Here.
We have a quorum present with all trustees present.
Thank you, Secretary Andrew. I'd like to now ask for a motion and a second to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Item 4 is our moment of silence, and I'd call on Vice President Provost Dale Kapla to come forward, please.
Thank you, Chair Young, and good morning. A moment of silence for Peter Cabela. Peter Cabela passed away on April 30th, 2023. Peter was an undergraduate student majoring in biology with a concentration in physiology. Peter loved animals and volunteered his time to help the homeless. Please join me in a moment of silence for Peter. Thank you.
Thank you, Dale. Item 5 is partner engagement, and I'd like to at this time call on Mr. Dave Nyberg, who will present on business and industry strategic partnerships. David, you want to come on up and have a seat?
Morning, trustees.
Morning.
And
Morning.
President Testman and university leadership. Great to be with you this morning. This morning, I'm going to start off a series of presentations focused on Northern's partnerships. Specifically on this presentation, our partnership with businesses, industry, and other mutually aligned institutions, economic development groups is an example. And it kind of, as you can see here on the front slide, a little bit of background, and we'll talk about what we view as NMU's value proposition and our important role as a rural serving institution in the Upper Peninsula to help students along their journey and as they become alumni, and also working in collaboration with the community to create opportunity for students and to advance the institution as a whole. Before I get started, I want to acknowledge my colleague Denise Elizondo, who's here with me from the Business Partnerships team. Thanks, Denise, and for your counsel on this presentation. As background, in 2018, Northern, by posting what ultimately was the Director of Corporate Engagement position that I applied for, was the university's first effort to establish a centralized approach for business engagement and institutional partnerships. And as stated here, the focus really is on building relationships across the institution to align a mutual value with industry in the region and throughout the Upper Midwest to create opportunities for students and build collaboration for programs that are mutually beneficial. The office was expanded in 2020 as a kind of a natural evolution really to also carry forward this position's role with economic development organizations and other nonprofit groups that we work with regularly. This was already happening, but it was a formal acknowledgement that the office would also be the university's relationship manager for groups like Invest UP and Lake Superior Community Partnership. Last year in October, almost 1 year ago, we had the ability to post the business development manager position that Denise was, we were super excited that she was interested in. We selected her for. And this was established really to create a specialized focus on brand alignments, brand activations. You think about companies that want their brand on campus, sponsorships for events and programs, things like that, that are really kind of a foundational relationship building opportunity for the university and really a pipeline for deeper and more collaborative relationships in the future. So this is what Denise focuses on day in, day out. We have a master agreement process that we offer to companies as a point of convenience and look to build out those relationships, and we'll continue to do so. Externally, this creates a simple point of contact for the university, a front door, if you will. And internally, it's also a resource to various departments and centers to know that they have Denise and this person to rely on if they want to think about ideas for asking for industry support for new programs and events across campus. This slide we'll come back to. I'm gonna skip it real quick, but really what it's intended to focus is where we're trying to go. Deeper engagement, more meaningful relationships, and the connecting activities that lead to those relationships. And this is what I really want to focus on. You have in your packet additional detail from slides 6 through 9 that talk about each of these, what I call kind of core areas for engagement or value, the university's value proposition, to give you examples. But when I'm meeting with businesses, many of you, know what I'm talking about because you work in industry. The conversation 9 times out of 10 with our corporate partners focuses on that mutual alignment for talent acquisition and how growing companies can create opportunities for students. They want to build more meaningful work-based learning experiences. They want to get in front of students. They want to speak at classes. They may want to sponsor a capstone project or a senior thesis type of program. They want to have shared facilities and collaboration around facilities, in particular laboratories. And so it is really all about the students, and that's central to the mission here. The challenge is oftentimes this work is already happening across campus, but it is not centralized. It's happening in individual silos of the departments. And so often what we're trying to do is to be a connecting point to align opportunities for students in their various departments, and sometimes it's interdisciplinary, to make those connecting collaborations with industry. Some examples here, in addition to kind of the traditional academic programs, executive education and training programs, and the continuing education workforce development department is a great example of an asset. Faculty scholarship and student capstones, opportunities for sponsored research. We don't do a lot at Northern. We're not an R1 or an R2 institution, but there are opportunities for collaboration with some companies around product innovation and intellectual property. I've talked to Dean Eckert a little bit about how we can advance that. And of course, I've mentioned lab and facilities engagement, and we'll talk about some examples there. And the last being kind of that brand activation, sponsorships, programs, and events, that retail-facing interest that companies have if being affiliated with Northern. I'm going to skip through these quickly in the sake of time, but this just provides some examples of the types of things that we do. Looking back, these are some success stories to really kind of paint a picture for you as to what we're talking about. And they're not monolithic. Sometimes these relationships spread across various value intersections. Certainly around talent, the relatively new cybersecurity, information assurance and cyber program has created an opportunity for us to build a consortium of K-12 partners in industry across the Upper Peninsula, which has led to new companies locating in Marquette and investing here, establishing internship programs and hiring Northern students, and an industry advisory committee that we formed is a really great forum for engagement and collaboration, and that has led to other partnerships with state and federal agencies, and even opportunities to provide insight to the new national cyber workforce strategy coming out of the White House. One that I'll talk a little bit about, you'll see Able Medical Devices and Longyear and Resolve Surgical. There's a growing opportunity around medical device industry in our region, and there's an acute need for talent. Northern has those programs that creates a great opportunity for students. So we're going to try to be more intentional about doing more collaboration and building out the laboratory and classroom experiences, but also work-based learning in partnership with faculty. And of course, even non-degree programs, look at the CDL truck pictured there, Meyer, which has a master agreement and brand activations across campus, also has supported that program by donating equipment. And then philanthropic giving, the John and Melissa Bessie Foundation is a great example in their outstanding support for the updated new NMU hockey locker room. When you have a centralized office like this, it also creates a great opportunity for collaborating on grants. And oftentimes this goes through our non-governmental partners such as InvestUP or the Innovate Marquette Smart Zone. And it creates an opportunity for Northern to tag along and collaborate with other proposals that are central UP or region-wide focus that bring back a value to the university and allow faculty and students to participate in these efforts. Some examples are listed here. We've talked about brand affiliation, and then of course, if we're doing this really well, and we have a trust-built relationship with our corporate partners, and they're having good success, they're recruiting students, and they're having a great experience, it ultimately leads to opportunities where they want to give back. So we want to be in a position to catch those opportunities in a strategic manner. And so strategic giving is really foundational to all of this work, but it is not the entry point. It is not the focal point of engagement. Okay, so how are we doing? I did a little bit of looking at this slide and doing my best to say, okay, we're actually doing most of this stuff. We do this connecting activities really well. We have some room for improvement. We are attempting to do more strategic engagement with our corporate partners around student recruitment and alumni retention. I'm going to talk a little bit about that actually through the governor's Growing Michigan Together Council and some of the policy recommendations that we're recommending. Co-location is an interesting one. There are companies that are growing more of an interest in putting their facilities on campus or near campus as a means to build a stronger relationship with NMU. So those are things that we'd like to do. We don't have an institutional or industry affiliate program. This is something you see at larger universities where it's essentially a membership club where there are various tiers where companies have access to do various things across campus. I think we might have an opportunity to do that in certain programs that makes sense, maybe construction management and others, but it's not something we're doing right now. And I talked a little bit about licensing university technology. We do need to upgrade or update our intellectual property and tech transfer policy. There are new assets in our region that we could collaborate with to create opportunities for students students or faculty that have translational research to leverage resources for intellectual property and potentially collaboration with the university. I'll talk specifically, broad strokes I've given you. I really want to dive into some specifics of where we want to go. And this is something you may have heard me talk a little bit about in private. I'm really excited about Dr. Tessman's enthusiasm and leadership for this, as well as our faculty in the engineering technology department, in particular Dr. Cale Polkinghorn. As I mentioned, companies want to do very creative partnerships around talent and recruitment. We are very fortunate that we have three really excellent medical device manufacturers here in Marquette. One is relatively new, that's Mount Manufacturing, and that's a company that was actually former NMU alums that have gone on and built startups in this space and came back to Marquette because this is where they want to live. Now they're growing their company and hiring NMU students to do that. And other more incumbent companies, especially Resolve Surgical, that came out of the Pioneer Surgical, and Able Medical Devices, which is part of Longyear Corporation. Each one of these companies have a very acute demand for CNC machining and programming talent, and they're looking to upskill their existing employee talent because they have a really great growth posture. And so we see this as a great opportunity for NMU to be a part of their success and to create opportunities for current students, alums, and future students at Northern and grow enrollment around these programs as maybe a center of excellence for talent development and medical device manufacturing. How we're looking to do that is we're launching a pilot program that Brock actually came up with this term called Work Scholars. And think of it as, it's not an internship. It's an opportunity for students across their academic journey at NMU to go and work and get paid and have an intentional classroom application, and they're going to be doing the work that they would have been learning in the classroom, and they will have supervision by a mentor at the company and on faculty. It requires a little bit of creative development on the academic process. We just had a working meeting with operational supervisors at each of these companies and Dr. Kapla and Dr. Polkinghorn to start the work of figuring that curriculum out. It may take a year through the processes in place, but ultimately the story that you can see here makes a lot of sense. We have growth posture in this industry. We have the programs here at NMU to make it happen, and it can give students and future students a really great opportunity to graduate, get a good paying job, work in an exciting growing industry, and live here in Marquette and be a part of a new economy around this industry cluster in Marquette. And again, this slide again, just to kind of bring it back to this pilot and what we're doing with these companies, you can see that it's getting more green. This is what we're trying to do, and we think that if we can be successful with this pilot program in the medical device cluster, that this can be scaled across campus. And we're already thinking a little bit about 2 or 3 other programs that may make sense. So something to look forward to in the future. I'm happy to talk about this. I want to be mindful of time because we have other topics to get to, but this is a snapshot of the forward plan that I put together for really an intentional growth strategy for this office. Right now, it started with just me and, kind of doing the best I can to build this program and take, having the opportunity to post a position and taking on Denise. Denise and I have sat down. We've done research. We've talked to colleagues across the country that do this work and have been doing it at universities that have been doing it for a long time and are quite successful. And we really think we need a formalization of our office. We need a name. We're suggesting the Office of Business and Strategic Partnerships. It captures what we actually do. We don't just work with businesses. We work with non-government organizations, economic development, and basically any non-government group that wants to help on workforce development or advancing opportunity for students through this work. Step one in doing this is really to have more thoughtful way of doing communication and work across campus. And so I've suggested that we create what we're going to call the Business Partnerships Network. This will be a forum or a task force group that will meet regularly and share ideas and build a strategy for how we're going to do this work together. Think various entities in academic affairs, athletics, certainly marketing and communications, the many centers we have across campus, and NMU Foundation and alumni relations. We need a website. We're going to do that. And I talked about the on-campus engagement component. We're thinking this fall and maybe doing a workshop or a lunch and learn and kind of starting to brainstorm and get ideas from faculty and academic leaders about what they would like to do with industry. What have we been missing? What should we be working on with you, and how do we prioritize that work? We do need to formalize a protocol for exclusive marketing. It's something we're not doing at Northern. Think about our vendor partnerships. How do we, while putting out RFPs for contracts with businesses we do work with at the university, there's an opportunity to do exclusive marketing around that as well. And then, of course, coming back to that endpoint of strategic giving and give back to the university, aligning all of this work with the goals for the campaign and looking at large foundations and collaborative grant opportunities to support campaign goals. Think about large foundations we have in Michigan that have giving preferences and priorities that align with programs that we're focusing on here at Northern, such as SHINE, the suite of rural leadership programs that are growing, which is really great, and the honors program. So that concludes my presentation on business and strategic partnerships. There is actually a pretty strong correlation with the next presentation, which is kind of a unique opportunity with the governor's Growing Michigan Together Council that I've had the great opportunity to participate in. And I'll talk about that in a second, but maybe I can pause here and take questions. That makes sense.
Questions?
If there are any. Okay.
Good.
All right, so I'll go quickly here. Uh-oh.
Is that the one you want?
Yep. And I think most of this is background for you. The governor announced this very audacious and ambitious effort at the Mackinac Policy Conference that we need to grow our population in Michigan. We're going to appoint a talented council to oversee that process and actually recommend policy shifts in our state tied to funding that's going to help us move the needle in growing population. You saw the council was appointed shortly after that time in May. It's co-chaired by Ambassador John Ricolta Jr. and Shirley Stincato. There are 7 non-voting members. These are cabinet members across state government, and ultimately the council established 4 work groups to do the hard task of building the recommendations that they'll consider. You can see those all listed here. Our friend Marty Fattanti at InvestUP was asked to co-chair the Jobs, Talent, and People work group, and Dr. Richard Kobach, the president of Michigan Tech, and I were asked to serve on the higher education work group. This is a snapshot at the timeline. It's a very, as I mentioned, very ambitious, very fast process. We had our first meeting just over a month ago. We've already had 5 meetings. We actually have one here at 40 minutes that I'll be zooming into, and we have a public hearing in Lansing on Monday. So we're moving fast. Right now we're at the process of taking all of the research from the consulting team and putting together, ultimately was going to be 3 to 4 policy recommendations, think legislative ideas that are tied to funding that will help higher ed move the needle on talent in Michigan and talent recruitment, attention, including enrollment. And what I like is being referred to as stickiness. How do we keep alumni and create opportunities for them here in Michigan through higher ed partnerships? And actually, one of the things that we've recommended, and I've had the really great opportunity to work with Dr. Tessman, Dr. Kapla, Dr. Vandenhoven, and Deanna Hemela, we meet weekly before every work group meeting to kind of debrief and talk about strategy and what do we want to give input on to this process. And it's been very helpful. And a lot of the things that we've put on the table are kind of crystallizing right now into recommendations, including that work scholars concept that I talked about a moment ago. I hope that we'll see some state funding incentives tied to programs like that that'll incentivize universities to do similar things. This is just kind of a snapshot of one of the slides that we got at the beginning of our first work group meeting. These are the objectives. As I already talked about this. The goals really are to come up with policy recommendations tied to funding that will help grow the state's population. And really it is focused on the student journey all the way from that pre-enrollment to enrollment, their time at the university. What are we doing to help them stay in Michigan after graduation? This is where we're at. I put a blue box around kind of the next meeting time frame, and we're really getting to the point of making these final recommendations to the council that will probably finalize them in a couple of weeks. As I mentioned, there is a public hearing in Lansing. For those of you that are interested, it will be live streamed, and if you're in Lansing area, you're welcome to attend in person. The location is TBD. We haven't gotten that update yet. I suspect it'll be at some state government building or maybe on the campus of Michigan State, but we know it'll be in the Lansing area at 11:30 on Monday. So I'm happy to answer any questions about the Growing Michigan Together Council work group. Otherwise, happy to pass it off.
Dave,
Yeah.
the timeline you alluded to, almost everybody agrees that, boy, that just seems impossible. Are they going to meet it, or do you think there's going to be an extension into January?
I don't know. I don't like giving insider answers to questions that I truly don't know. I don't know. If I were to venture a guess, I would say that they're going to do it because they want to start getting to work on actual policy, legislative bills being introduced and working on that process early.
Okay, the follow-up is, and this has been my concern, I passed it on to Brock, is I see this as critical for where we're headed in the future, not just us, but the state, that you wear a lot of hats. I mean, you really do. And that this, to me, especially with a tight timeline, is really where you need to have a lot of focus.
Yeah.
And do you feel comfortable? Do you need more time? I mean, it's an odd place to ask it with, you know, your supervisors and everything else around, but seriously.
I do. And, we've made, yeah, I appreciate that question, actually. It's a really good one. We've made time every week to have thoughtful dialogue about what's being, now I'm one person on this work group. It's a diverse group. It is a work group. Ultimately, we're making recommendations to a council that will formalize recommendations to the governor. So we're into the weeds on higher ed policy ideas right now. We have great co-chairs in Bill Pink and Russ Cavaltuna. Russ is the president of Henry Ford Community College, and Bill Pink is president of Fair State University. They have a lot of similarities to NMU in terms of their mission. And we are being heard. The research team is giving good data and good support. But it is a consensus process, and there's some interesting dialogue happening right now about making sure we get this right. Let's not just rush to make some ideas that we think can be implemented by the legislature. Let's think big and try to make sure that whatever we're recommending will have lasting impact. So there's definitely a balance to that conversation right now that I'm a part of, and listen, I'm an optimist. I'm hopeful that we can do it. I did mention, and I do think it is a very ambitious goal, and I'll leave it at that.
Dave, can I just say, I mean, thank you for serving on this work group. I don't think we could have a better person on this work group, and I'll tell you why. You have a lot of higher education, kind of born and bred leaders in that work group, which is appropriate. But I think Dave's got this really neat combination of angles. I mean, you work at Northern, you have that higher ed knowledge, but your background is sort of broader than that. And so I think you've been able to bring a really good perspective in there. That's maybe why that kind of work scholars concept has probably been received very well from you, coming a little bit from an outsider's angle. So I feel really happy about where we're headed. I will not speak about Dave's work day and whether he has enough time, but I feel like the university leadership team has been very well looped in and connected. So thank you, Dave.
We're doing our best. And it is, and like anything with these, you've been a part of them too. Work groups, task forces with ambitious agendas and short time frames. You have to prioritize. And I've really prioritized on 2 or 3 things that I've talked with Brock and others about, and I think we're having good input. That's gonna be part of the recommendation.
Well, thanks for all the effort.
Yep.
Yes,
Thanks.
thank you.
Yeah.
All right, I will pass this on to, I believe, Joe Lubig.
Yep, Dr. Lubig, thank you, David, for
Thanks,
all your
Thanks,
work.
Dave.
Thanks. Doctor.
Good morning. Thanks, Dave. You? Oh, good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Good morning.
All right, here we go, right? So, Joe Lubig, School of Education, Leadership, Public Service, right? Teacher education, so primary role. And so just tell you a little story here, right? So for the past 5 or 6 years, a group of us across the state in education, working with Michigan Department of Education, which we consider on a lot of levels like an additional program. They are amazing colleagues to all of us and really responsive to our needs. We've been working diligently to really communicate that we need support, money. We need support in money for people to become teachers. And a real opportunity was to utilize the workspaces, the school sites, the intermediate school district sites, and non-traditional teaching spaces where people are already employed who can't get to a university. So we're very fortunate that our program is really built around our alumni network and around the world, but really our primary network and partners and alums working in school settings in the state of Michigan. And our focus really is on rural settings. That's really what we do well. We're not shy about going into suburban or urban settings, but rural settings is what we're really good at. So you get a call from somebody, an alum like Justin Gloising, who's in the Alpena Intermediate School District, and he's like, "Hey Joe, you know what's happening, right?" I'm like, "Yeah, I know, Justin, this is good, right? We got to talk because there's going to be money available, bipartisan effort to develop a pool of money, $125 million for a Grow Your Own initiative, which gets to everything that we've been talking about. Let's utilize the talent we have in rural workspaces and develop those folks to teach children and young adults." So Justin, first thing he did is he put me in touch with one of his paraprofessionals. So I got to meet Stasha. Stasha is a paraprofessional in a school that is the closest university setting she can get to is 2 hours and 20 minutes away. She is employed 40 hours a week. She has a family. She is the insurance provider through her job in the school system for her family. There's no way Stasha's leaving her job to go complete the last 2 years of a degree to get a teaching certificate and be licensed. That's not going to happen. They can't afford it. It'll undo everything that she's done with her family. So I get to talk to Stasha, and what does she want? She wants to be a K-5 elementary teacher. She needs an online program, and we don't have that. So we call the Michigan Department of Education, and we tell Stasha's story, and Sean Cockey and Sarah Kate Levan and Gina Garner, like, well, you have an online program. They need a bachelor's degree. Can you do that? Yep, we can do that. Applied Workplace Leadership. Awesome. You have 41 credits of undergraduate coursework. It could become a K-5 teacher. Strip out the subject area requirement. Can you do that? Yep, we can do that. Joe, I don't know why you're calling us. You have a program. Go ahead and do that, right? So we did that. So we set that up as a unique pathway, leveraging our global campus right, and all those other opportunities, and the talent of our faculty, and we started getting ready. We started talking about other people who could help us teach in this program. So we were able to enroll Stasha in a K-5 pathway, along with about 125 other human beings, to become K-5 elementary teachers in the state of Michigan. We're also able to leverage what we have at the graduate level, which is a reading specialist program, learning disabilities program, early childhood education program, right? And a secondary pathway through our Masters of Instruction to help more people get licensed as practicing teachers or to add licensure. And then we also developed with the state of Michigan an LD experimental. In our state, you have to have a gen ed teaching certificate degree license first before you can add anything special education. So we petitioned the state of Michigan to offer the learning disabilities as an initial certificate. So now we have a whole pool of online programs that are accessible across the state of Michigan, where now we've been able to engage 23 individual school districts and 48 of the 57 intermediate school districts in the state of Michigan to get people to licensure so that you can join Stasha and her peers in December of 2026, walking across the stage with a degree and with the ability and the capacity to teach children in rural school settings with some urban settings mixed in there. Brock wanted us to talk about partnerships, and all those partnerships are what let us do what we do and what we do extremely well. But I have to tell you, the Michigan Department of Education got this out there, and the Michigan Department of Treasury owned the approvals. Those approvals didn't come out until mid-June, which then meant I had to got to contact all of the schools, superintendents, principals, intermediate school districts. This list of people, this is biblical, right? I'm altar boy, former altar boy, right? In under 40 days. So we did a little bit better than another group of people did. On-campus partnerships with admissions, Global Campus, the Graduate College, Student Services, the Registrar, Financial Aid, the bookstore, faculty and staff program advisors, the Center for Teaching and Learning, instructional faculty, and our alumni network in less than 40 days, right? Enrolled about 300 new students to our university to get them started. Then we reached out a little further and we employed another 11 practicing teachers to embed them in the courses to provide some informal mentoring and to help coach folks, especially in that K-5 pathway. We are doing an amazing job. Our collective reputation around the state is incredible, and it's really because of those folks, and we get an easy product to sell and market, which is our curriculum, because of our faculty, cooperating teachers, and university supervisors, and the staff that collect, analyze, and report on those data. We're doing good things. So December 2026, right? So whether you're still on the board or not, grab a seat up on the stage and shake Stasha's hand, right? Because she'll be ready to teach like a wildcat. All right? Thank you so much.
Hang on one second, Joe. We
Yeah.
have some questions. So,
Joe, how do you deal with the student teacher? I'm just curious.
So this is really cool. So let's build off of what Dave's talking about, right? Student teaching experience and all the clinical experiences required to get to student teaching are embedded in the workplace they're already in. Ooh. So the paraprofessional, there's a variety of paths. Some of the paraprofessionals are getting, I think in the fall of 24, because they'll start their ed sequence coursework in the summer. This is for the K-5 bachelor seeking folks. Their employers have carved out within the grant funds they applied for about 10 hours a week to hire other paraprofessionals so that those parapros enrolled in the program can let some things go and be intentional about their clinical experiences prior to student teaching. And then in their student teaching, we'll set it up like we always do with a mentor, a cooperating teacher, a university supervisor, and that triad will work together as a team with Dr. Laura Kennedy and our admin assistant, Paula Rattari, to make sure that all those pieces are moving together so that we meet all the state requirements. The grad programs are set up the same way, just a little different. The mentoring experience flexes because most of them are practicing professionals who are already licensed. The learning disabilities experimental and the secondary ed pathway, those are initial. So it's set up like I previously explained for the K-5. So
here we have a situation where the state is in dire need because of, I won't throw the blame where it goes, but
do you want an hour for that conversation? I got it, yeah, so.
the panic is out there because there aren't enough teachers, qualified teachers. And we have staff people who see the opportunity, see what we have, and are able to come up with what I'll call an elegant solution to cover the needs of the problem.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome. And it's been, it was really neat, Greg, to see $125 million in Grow Your Own funds be available. So that's grant funds, right? So there's rules for all that and steps to alter those rules. The really neat thing was to see in the school aid budget, $66 million identified for the Talent Together group, which represents that 48 intermediate school district consortium, of which our Marquette Alger Race is the fiscal agent. And that was really powerful because there's a lot of flexibility there. That means with the state aid appropriation that we hope can continue in some way, now we can also address the need for school social workers, school guidance counselors, school administrators, because those are other needs, and start working on a plan to replace the paraprofessionals who are enrolled in programs, because that'll be the next gap that we need to fill. But we're working on that through a career tech ed strategy statewide, which NMU has been a leader in that area as well.
And this is bipartisan.
Isn't that great to say that? So everybody falls all over themselves for early childhood funding and education and support. And that's really started to happen more overtly over the past 2 years with anything that is in the K-12 pathway. So it's really good to see that happening. Yeah.
Steve?
Joe, right now you're concentrating on K-5. Do you see this expanding into the, secondary education?
So Steve, that's a great question. So I'll go back to the Talent Together funds again. So not having it a grant creates a lot of freedom. So what Talent Together right now is doing is they're getting folks to degree in a subject area. So for us to enroll them in our secondary ed pathway through the Masters of Instruction, I need them to have an English degree, a biology degree, a chemistry degree, a content area that they can teach. Because if they're not grant bound, Talent Together is working with community and tribal colleges to get them to an associate's degree, leverage the Michigan Transfer Agreement, and get them to a degree, a local university setting, online setting, or a combination thereof, to get a bachelor's degree so they can then enroll in a pathway with us. It's really us, Western Michigan University, and I think U of M Flint have those secondary pathway opportunities. Yeah.
And just maybe to piggyback off of Steve's question, the shortages that a lot of schools see around industrial arts, if you have a welding program and who's really certified to do that, is there anything coming through that Talent Together network that might address that area too?
Yeah, Greg, so you'll probably want to meet the 9 people we have enrolled in that pathway right now. 4 of them, they need a bachelor's degree. So they have all these years in industry, they have an associate's, but they have to have a bachelor's degree. So we're going to get them to a bachelor's degree in the applied workplace leadership. And then there's 3 courses they need to take at the grad level, learning disabilities course, reading course required by state law, and then an internship. And we'll use their school site for the same thing. Yeah, but we need to get better at that at the undergrad level, which is where, if I could wave my wand, I haven't seen the Barbie movie yet. I got to start referencing that movie. But we need this type of investment for people coming out of high schools or those that are going to tribal and community colleges for 2 years, because that's where we get a lot of staying power. We get a 30-year career out of those folks. And so we're starting discussions that way as well. Yeah. Did I answer that
Yes,
for you?
thank you.
Okay.
How does this work with #teach?
Yeah, so #teach, okay. The Grow Your Own funds, when schools apply, we're a partner, so we don't have to do any grant work. This is awesome, right? I love this, right? We get to be part of a grant, we don't have to do any forms. This is great. So the Grow Your Own funds are limited for any alternative route program. We do not have any alternative route programs at our university. We've created pathways with existing grad and undergrad programs. #teach, if you were to enroll, you're capped at $10,000, right? to enroll at our university, people completing their bachelor's degree, we're spending the $34,000 it takes for the degree, tuition fees, travel to some on-site face-to-face meetings, the university supervisor, the laptop. We get to build that all in, independent and public universities. So hashtag Teach just has a limitation on the amount of dollars, but our partners prefer university-based programs. It's something they trust, and I like the face-to-face network that comes along with that. Yeah. So, but those are still necessary options. We have folks that are leveraging a grant or Talent Together funds to get a bachelor's degree, so they can go do that route because that's the best option for them. Yeah.
Great. Anything else? Joe, thank you. Was a great presentation.
Oh, thanks for your time. Yeah,
Well,
it's
last
good
time I
seeing all
saw
of
you, we
you.
were on Mackinac Island, so it's good to see you
Right?
back here. So.
Steve, we're putting 2 student teachers out there in the winter. Isn't that cool? Yeah, we'll have to go visit.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Okay, we have our next group is Dale and Jeff and Jerry, I think, are coming up. If I could just remind everybody, we're okay time-wise. We have a hard stop at 9 because we have a committee meeting that's gonna be live streamed at 9:05. So if you could just be sensitive to the time. I think everybody's given 15 minutes, so. Thank you. Thanks for being here.
Well, good morning, everyone. We're going to talk to you a little bit about some of the transfer initiatives that we have going on. Many of you know we started an enrollment committee well over a year ago. Amy Barnsley from the Math and Computer Science Department is chairing that along with me. And we recently created a subcommittee of that enrollment committee. It's the Transfer and Advocacy Committee. And there's going to be 8 members on it. It's a whole collection of folks across campus. A student and a faculty member will be on it as well. One of the things that we're trying to identify is what we're currently doing for transfer students and what we could do better. Transfer makes up a decent portion of our enrollment every year. And we want to make sure that they don't run into any barriers. I mean, it's very, very difficult sometimes when students are transferring from a different institution, or at least intending to transfer from a different institution, and they have 3 or 4 other institutions where they have credit from. And it's very time consuming to look at their transcripts and see what transfers in. And so there's processes for that, and there's some things, and quite honestly, that are barriers for them. And this committee is a subcommittee, is going to be a standing committee. And we're going to try to identify those barriers and try to make it just as seamless as can be. So there'll be more to come on that. We're just getting rolling with it, and as we start coming up with new things to improve, we'll let the board know.
Well, and you have a handout about transfer initiatives, and I'm going to focus on 2 of the areas on there: the transfer pathways and partnerships, and transferology. But we can talk about other things too if you'd like. But specifically, as Dale was saying, as students come to us, and we've got a significant population, not only of transfer students, but students that come with prior college credit. That's our first-year freshmen are coming with increasingly more college credit through all the opportunities they're given. And so it makes sense that as they're coming through numerous institutions, that we're forming partnerships with those institutions so that both the sending and receiving institutions can focus on defining the pathway, guiding the student through that pathway so that they can achieve their ultimate goal in the most effective way. So in December of 2022, so we're 10 months into this position, we were able to add a position to our department that works on transfer pathways and partnerships. It's very much an academic endeavor. Academic department heads and faculty from Northern work with their counterparts at the 2-year institutions to talk about articulation agreements and defined pathways. But there's a lot of administrative stuff that has to happen behind the scenes that there's just not the bandwidth for faculty and department heads that are doing all kinds of other things. So this position was really defined to establish protocols and processes, have a way to monitor, have a way to nudge, have a way to identify opportunities, and get the right people at the table to establish those agreements and pathways. So that is working really well. It's a huge component of this position, and it's moving agreement development and signing along, which is awesome. So far, as I said, we're 10 months in. There's been established processes. There's 5 new pathways that have been signed, and they're listed there on your handout. There are 4 more pathways that are in the final stage of review by the register right now, and 17 more in draft phase. So there's been a lot of work that's been being done on these. And then this person also helps on training our staff and others like the success advisors and people in the registrar's office and other places in terms of using those articulation agreements as a recruitment tool, which is really important. Going forward, the next big goal we have is to work with our partner sending institutions to identify the students at their places that are following articulation agreements. This hasn't been happening. And so we want them to identify, them to inform us so that we can connect with those students early and then track them once we're here, once they're here, so that we understand how effective these partnerships are becoming. So our goal would be to see more students coming from those institutions in those majors for which we have agreements. The other goal with that would be to hopefully connect those students to each other as they're at those institutions, so they start to feel that cohort model, that community, and then connect further when they're on campus too, because we know that sense of belonging and connection is important to their ultimate success. So we've got some lofty goals with that. I think the departments we've been working with really feel that the work is starting to take a shape that's very understandable and that can be followed, and that makes the real work of making those agreements on the academic side easier to conduct in the end. Part and parcel with that is always a technology piece, and that's the transferology item I want to talk about. That's an investment the university made in a tool that's used across the country by students and institutions. We went live in February of 2023. And the purpose of it is that a student who is anywhere or planning to go anywhere can look up in that system to see what institutions across the country might accept and grant credit for the courses I'm taking or plan to take. So it's a great tool as they and their advisors at their other institutions are trying to define their path. They can see what institutions might make sense for them to complete their degree. A really important part of this is the number of transfer equivalencies that an institution loads. The more you have, the more likely you're to appear as a match when a student's just searching, who will accept my credit? So we've loaded, our staff has loaded almost 177,000 course equivalencies since February, which means that we keep moving up. Northern keeps moving up on the list when people are looking for a match. And to just define that a little bit, so every student at every school takes freshman composition. I want to know who's going to take my freshman composition class from my 2-year college. They can plug that in and the match has come up. Or they can say, I'm kind of thinking about these 3 institutions, these 3 universities to transfer to. Who's going to take most of my credit? Who's going to take all of my credit? What's that going to look like? We're also able to load into that system actually those articulation agreements and other defined pathways and guides that help the student and the advisor at that 2-year institution help the student plan. So it's these earlier touches. It's the ability for our success advisors across campus to talk with those prospective students before they even apply to Northern to help them see that Northern is the place that they can finish their program. We're not the only game in town. We're not the only place that they're thinking about. So we have to be the place that is helping them figure that out along the way. So I'll stop there.
Thank you, Jerry.
Yeah.
I'll just scoot over. Good morning. Wanted to touch on when we started forming this presentation last week, reached out to some folks on campus for stories of students who were transfer students. And within one day, I received stories of a student from California, a student from Iron Mountain, and a global campus student, all from different parts of campus. And they all have pretty incredible stories. And what they all boil down to, if we have time, I want to tell one. They all boil down to is the folks on campus that work together to make these work. It's not just the admissions office. It's those folks' ability to connect with faculty and their advisor, working through things like semester deletion processes and for those folks who are, coming to us 20 years later. And so there's a lot of collective effort that happens on campus to make the transfer process work. But I want to talk a little about, Jerry's talked about the recruitment process. Another thing we have coming up in the recruitment process is looking at a broader national approach. And we hope to capture some transfer folks in that process while, paying attention to those schools, those community colleges that are right here. Certainly in the UP, we don't want, we want to work closer with them. Looking at Bay, some leadership change, we think we have some mutually beneficial opportunity there to connect with Bay, working with those folks. there's this in between the point of recruitment between the first day of class. And orientation comes to mind. How can we look to tweak some orientation processes to better work with transfer students? I don't have all the answers there yet. That will take some time. We're just getting through the start of the semester, 2 weeks removed from our new orientation. We went from a fall makeup to we wanted to labeling that as the sixth session of orientation rather than this fall makeup, which we know collected a lot of transfers. So looking at enhancing transfers and normalizing the transfer process, I think is important to us. And I think some other gains we'll see with our transfer students is we know so many of them come to us as commuter students. And I think the work that Nicole Shoup will be doing and working with commuter students we're going to identify transfer students in that process. And as Jerry mentioned, we're looking to create community with transfer students before they're here. So whether that's at their community college or in geographic locations where they're coming from, and we want to pick up that work while they're on campus. We want to build that connection and connectivity to those folks when they're here. And so that's where Nicole Shoup's work will come into play and finding those students while they're on campus and connecting and making sure that they have what they need. I do have time. This is a pretty touching story. This is a global campus student, Sarah Speaker, that I really thought wrapped up the type of work we do to help these students. And so she's pursuing a bachelor's of social work, and she's a new first-time transfer, started 2 weeks ago. So Sarah's words: I returned to school to finish what I started 26 years ago and complete my formal education to obtain my bachelor's of social work. With my children growing older and becoming more independent, I realized I could finally invest in myself and complete my degree. I not only owe it to myself, I owe it to my children. I want to be an example of resilience for them. I want to show them that investing in yourself is essential and it's never too late. A commitment to myself and my children on both practical and spiritual levels is my primary motivation for completing my degree. I'm motivated by increasing income potential, employment sustainability, and personal fulfillment. Additionally, it is a commitment to the discipline that I study. Social workers are in high demand, and several populations suffer due to the low number of professionals serving them. I want to make a difference. NMU's global campus is the perfect environment for me to get the tools I need to get the job done! ! The best challenge I will face is returning is acclimating to the school setting while balancing my responsibilities at home. Sometimes it feels like I'm learning to study all over again. I have felt great comfort in knowing that there are so many resources to help me on my journey. I can request and receive valuable tutoring from the comfort of my home office at no additional cost. Another challenge I'll face is financial. I need to ensure that I have financial resources to continue my education. I received assistance in finding and applying for scholarships via my NMU. No matter what challenges I will face, there's a resource that Northern Michigan University has in place to help me identify and overcome them. This goes on, but you get the point. When I originally applied, I could not meet the GPA acceptance requirements for transfer students and was additionally denied acceptance to NMU. I was invited to provide more information regarding my life circumstance so that my request could be considered. Northern Michigan University decided to look at me as an individual with a story that deserved to be heard, regardless of my previous academic performance noted on my transcript. I felt grateful that NMU valued my application enough to review it and decide if I could be granted the opportunity to return to school this fall. My appeal was successful, and I'm so thankful to be allowed to better myself through my journey at NMU and the global campus. I'm humbled with gratitude and excited about my future path.
Great story.
That'll make you feel good, right?
Yeah.
So, how about questions?
Lee?
Jerry, the transferology is, if I submit my transcript or my class and it's accepted there, it's automatically accepted by Northern?
It's already an established equivalency, so
Okay.
it already is guaranteed.
Yeah.
Yep,
So I can be assured that.
Yes.
that
Yes, yep. And you can actually go on and create a transferology account yourself if you like and see how it works.
Oh, maybe I'll do that.
Transferology.com. Yeah.
Take the guesswork out of that whole process is great.
Yeah.
True.
There's a lot of numbers floating around on this page, but looking at our institutional effectiveness dashboard, it looks like we had 15% increase in transfer students.
And a big part was due to the programs Joe was talking about. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
When I went to the Governor's Higher Ed Summit down in Dearborn, and Deanna went, and this was one of the major topics, these transfer initiatives. It's a really, it's a big area right now. And, so I'm really glad we're focusing on it because it's so important to remove those barriers, you know, so kids can come here, transfer credits. It's very important, so thank you. Anybody else? Okay, good work, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, everybody, we're gonna take a break here, and the Academic Affairs Committee will convene at 9:10. 9:10?
9:10.
Thank you.
It's like 500 steps, Greg.
Good morning. I'd like to welcome you all to the Northern Michigan University Academic Affairs Committee. I'm Lisa Fitanti, and also here are members of the committee, Steve Lindberg, Trustee Steve Lindberg, Trustee Greg Sepinen, Trustee Greg Toutant, Chair Steve Young, ex officio, and President Tessman, ex officio. First on the agenda, we have the Academic Senate update with Dr. Jamie Craig, this would be our new chair of the Academic Senate, and I think this is your first time
It is my first
giving
time.
us an update. Great. You're welcome.
My update is very short and sweet, so that's good. So good morning, everyone. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to address the board. I want to let you know that we have recognition coming up for a student who has passed. And so I just want to throw out to Dale that I'm glad that we're doing that moment of recognition. And our thoughts are with that family. Along with that, in your packet, you guys have the names of the people who are on Academic Senate. You also have the dates of the Academic Senate meetings, both the full Senate and the Senate exec. The one thing I want to tell you is there's one correction. So on the full Senate, instead of Chet DeFonso, it's actually Robbie Goodrich from history. I would also like to extend an invitation to you all, and I did send it through Kathy, that you guys are welcome to attend the Senate. Just let me know, and we will welcome you with open arms to come and visit us. And then just to let you know that we started off the year with a great discussion from Police Chief Bath talking about safety on campus, which was very well received from Senate. Any questions?
Any other members of the committee have any
Maybe
questions?
one question, perhaps, is there a, one or two of the bigger topics that the Senate is currently addressing that you'd like us to know?
So currently right now, I'm still waiting for stuff to come in. So the proposals are all due October 1. So until I get those, I won't have a full grasp of what's coming. I do, of course, know nursing because that's where I come from. So nursing has a very large cut proposal that's coming that will definitely require some conversation. But that's kind of all I know right now.
No. Great, thank you.
Did you have?
Just a question.
Mm-hmm.
The invitation, excuse me, I know there's meeting dates in here, but are those now back to being in person?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So all meeting dates are in person. Ideally, we're in Peninsula 2. We've been kind of jumping around a little bit. So I do know on the kiosk it'll say exactly where it is, but if somebody's interested in coming, I will gladly let you know where it's going to be at.
And I think we'll talk about that because I know it's been a while, I think, since any of us have been there. And so it's probably
Yeah,
something we
absolutely.
should,
What was
especially if
it,
they're back in person, so some of the locals can.
Robbie Goodrich instead of Chet DeFonso.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thank you, Jamie. Next on the agenda, we have Dr. Casey Holder. He's going to give us a charter schools update.
Thank you. Good morning. So thank you for the opportunity to address the board. In the information packet, you had the informational items. I'm not going to go over them in great detail. 4 schools coming up for reauthorization this year. So in May, I'll be bringing you a recommendation for contract terms. The second item is the revised guide to performance frameworks for charter schools, not performance frameworks in general. But that will be reviewing over the next year-ish and starting to think about how that impacts our own performance framework and how that will then obviously be communicated with you as that progresses. New board members for the schools, and 2 quick things that are not on your memo. First, I'd like to say a big thank you to Interim Provost Kapla and President Tessman. In August, I was fortunate enough to host MCASA, which is the Michigan Council of Charter School Authorizers. And my peers from the state were here for the very first time. And those 2 gentlemen did a wonderful job welcoming. And in fact, President Tesman, you were the first president or provost to ever ask a question of the group. So it kind of caught everybody by surprise. And so thank you for engaging the group. People were kind of sitting back going, what's this guy doing asking questions? So thank you for engaging the group. Secondly, at a previous report I updated based upon the turnover in Lansing, I might get to do a new legislative report, and yes, I do. So December 1st, I have a due date for a legislative report that'll come out of my office. In my first look, 90-ish% of it at least is publicly available data in other places, so I'm just compiling things. So in December, that will be in addition to your normal packet. You'll see the report that I submit on December 1st, which is obviously before our meeting in December, but you'll see that information. But they're just asking for schools, who applied for the school, and revenue for the school and things like that. So questions that I could entertain.
One question, the fee structure for the schools that are chartered through Northern, is it still around a 3% or 5%? That's
Three by statute. 3%.
And the schools are still are able to kind of adjust and function?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I'm proud to say that we do also offer a $25,000 opportunity to schools to actually apply back for awards for school improvement. And so we do, so they are very, positively functioning schools that have no problem working with that threshold.
Thank you.
Great.
The new board appointees, are these two, in essence, self-selected boards?
So they go through a process of, yes, in essence. And so they go through a process of nominating individuals, and then the board would actually interview them and try to figure out if they're a good fit. And then what happens is they will apply to us. We do a background check. We do go through the application, which does include an interview by our board relations person, and then that is a nomination from the board to us, and we have the right of refusal or the right of acceptance of their nomination. So in essence, at the 100,000 foot level, you would kind of say they could be.
Has there ever been in your
6 years of running?
Right, anybody that's been, no, we don't want to go with this person?
Absolutely, and there are times, well, and some of our schools, we have several applicants for one open seat. In other schools, it's harder to find people to fill that. But yes, absolutely, we have had people that haven't made it for a variety of reasons.
No, I mean, once they kind of say, here's our candidate, where
where we have said no.
Where we say, no, this, you need to go back to the drawing board.
I would have to look back at our actual record, but I do know that we do have a pretty influential voice in saying, yeah, let's look at these two people rather than the person you brought forward.
So it's more on the
So it is a
front end.
negotiate. Yes. So our board relations director definitely partakes in the process for sure. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Steve?
And you may not know the exact number, but could you give me an idea of how many students we're talking about in these institutions?
Absolutely. So we have roughly about 4,100 students over the 9 schools. 7 of them are K-8 schools. Our 2 K-12 schools are here locally, the North Star and then Nottawash down close to Escanaba. And they're pretty small high schools, graduating classes of like 5 to 10. But so predominantly K-8 students.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? Okay, thank you,
Thank
Casey.
you.
We
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Have a good day.
Casey?
So next we have Dr. Alex Wilson and Dr. Matt Jennings, and they're going to present on the interdisciplinary collaboration between the Upper Michigan Brain Tumor Center and medicinal plant chemistry.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting us this morning to talk about this collaborative effort between the Upper Michigan Brain Tumor Center and medicinal plant chemistry. I'm Matt Jennings, and this is Dr. Alex Wilson. So we're going to be chiming back and forth here through the talk So I'm going to provide, or we're going to provide some background information about the laboratories themselves, and then we'll get into some largely student-driven and student-initiated projects that seems to be pretty fruitful at this point. And so I guess we'll go ahead and jump right in. Try to figure out how to do this, which was pretty straightforward. Okay, so I'm the lab director for the Upper Michigan Brain Tumor Center. I'm also appointed in the School of Clinical Sciences. I'm the program director for our Clinical Molecular Diagnostics graduate program. Within the laboratory, we have roughly 20 students right now. So it is a busy place. The vast majority of our students are undergraduate students. However, we do have 4 graduate students, and then about 16, 17 undergraduate students, and then with the additional students of Dr. Wilson here, we have 2 more, Brendan Cast and Ryan Nixon, that we're going to talk about today. Their data, and we're going to talk about Darren Simmons and Jacob Cortez in the upper right-hand corner there. A couple years ago, Darren Simmons came to me and said, hey, I came across this particular chemical that seems to have an effect on cells, on cancer cells, and I'm thinking this particular plant might produce this particular compound, and would it be possible to test that? And so that sort of was the initiation for this particular project. And then he graduated, and then Jacob Cortez really did the initial work, and then Ryan and Brennan are the ones that are picking up where Jacob left off. But with that being said, we have a very large academically diverse background associated with our students, everything from clinical sciences, biology, neuroscience, cell and molecular, even zoology. So it's a very diverse group, a lot of independent ideas coming together. So it's very fruitful discussion when we actually meet and work through the lab. In addition to the medicinal plant chemistry collaboration, we also work with Dr. Evan Pratt from the chemistry department, who's developed a great project that has led to collaborations with Johns Hopkins University and the University of Pennsylvania that we're submitting an NIH grant for within the next month. So founded in about 2005 by Dr. Wynn and Dr. Rich Rogan, it was largely an immunology-based, to start, immunology-based research project that has slowly morphed over time, and again, largely driven by student interests and the ability for us to be flexible and say, it's a reasonable question, we could try to answer it. So that's sort of the genesis of the laboratory and really the genesis of this collaborative relationship.
Yeah, so a little bit on my lab's research. So we focus on plants and their chemicals, their properties, how the plants make them. There's several students, past and present, shown on this slide, and I've grouped them kind of based on what projects they were working on. So before we initiated this work on Radula, I've had students working on green tea and the chemicals in green tea, ginkgo biloba, and I have a collaboration with other colleagues in the chemistry department looking at Atropa belladonna, or deadly nightshade. So there's a lot of other plants we're looking at. We've definitely focused on this plant that I'm showing a large picture of on the right here, Radula complanata, and this has been interdisciplinary work with colleagues in the biology department, in EAGS, and now with the Upper Michigan Brain Tumor Center. We're going to be talking about extracts of this plant, and I'm showing 2 of them right here, just to kind of show you what this material looks like. To orient you, I have a background in botany, so I like to talk about the plants themselves. So we have just a cladogram showing how some plants are related. I've bolded the plants that we work with in our lab. Oh, I forgot to mention, I do have a master's student through the Integrated Biosciences program who's doing some work with cannabis, some hemp work. So the plants we're working with are called liverworts. Some people call them lower plants. They're related to mosses. So these are separated by about 500 million years of evolution from flowering plants like cannabis or pomegranate. So we're going to be talking about separating out chemicals from this plant, because plants have many thousands of chemicals in them, a given plant species or given plant tissue. Basically, all of what we're going to be showing is going to be separations, looking at these chemicals' affinity to different solids or different liquids.
So on the
Oh, sorry.
on the right half, this was the initial data from Jacob that basically demonstrated that on the far left here are essentially our positive control, our media, our cells growing, and then we basically hit those GBM cells, our cancer cells, with this particular extract. And you can see in the next couple columns there, the 1 to 10 and 1 to 100 extract, that there's a significant difference between essentially the viability of those cells after being exposed to the extract. So this was basically the sort of the seminal experiment that said there is something in the radio extract that is killing these GBM cells. And so the left half of the slide here is really just depicting, we're starting with thousands of different compounds, and we are basically trying to isolate one to a very small population. So there has to be a way to essentially figure out or differentiate these different populations from each other.
And so initially the approach, because that's a long list of compounds, we wanted to narrow this down. So we extracted some of the material after grinding it, and then we used different solvents, different liquids to just group it into 4 fractions. So on the top there is just the initial extract in ethanol, alcohol. And you can see there's some prominent compounds there. The peaks represent individual chemicals. There were about 400 that we could identify tentatively. So when we separated this into different liquids, you can see now some of those peaks are in certain containers and not others. And that's what allowed us to test which one was going to have any of the activity.
So this is in the upper left-hand corner of the slide is basically our cells in culture that we are going to be treating with the extract. Essentially on the right side there is a schematic of how this is done. So the purified material that Alex just spoke about is in the upper right side there. We plate our cells in culture and then we treat them with the extracts. And on the far left side, bottom left there is basically a sort of depiction as to what determines cell viability, which is what we're looking at. In short, live cells give off a light signal and the dead cells do not. And that's essentially what we're measuring with the fancy little instrument there at the bottom, which was a nice investment for the laboratory. But basically, we're just looking at cell viability at this particular point, and it's basically, are the cells alive versus cells are dead? And we are basically seeing that we are killing cells with this particular extract.
Oh, yeah, okay.
People's way.
Oh, that's okay.
So what we found is that 2 of these in particular killed many of the cells. So the hexane soluble fraction and the chloroform soluble fraction. There was a small maybe amount of activity in hexanol, and there wasn't really much activity in water. So this is going from less polar solvents to more polar solvents. So this was kind of on the polarity of the compound. And so you couldn't make just a water tea out of this and get these effects, is kind of what we're seeing here. And we have the controls there on the right. So those are when the cells weren't killed, they proliferated. So we wanted to narrow the list down because we had gone from about 400 compounds to maybe 40 or 50, which is still too many to differentiate about. So we took a second purification approach where we would take the liquid and we'd run it past a solid that the individual chemicals would have different affinity for the 2 phases, either the solid or the liquid. And we did that for both of the active fractions. And what you can see, this technique's called chromatography, chrome for color, right? So we separated out different colored compounds, essentially. And that's what you can see here for the hexane fractions, some yellow. And these the colors are from the chemicals there, but there's many dozens of chemicals in each of these fractions. So we tested those, and for the hexane separated fractions, we had some that were less active over on the left, and then ones that were more active. Ones I'll talk about further, I'm showing arrows, so H13, H15. And you can see that these were really effective at killing the cells. We did the same for the chloroform fraction, the other liquid. There's less color difference here, but still we were getting good separation of these chemicals across these 22 fractions. And we tested those, and we actually had activity in many of these. And I'll focus on 3 of these in our next experiment, because there's something I've kind of been hiding from you, which is that there's not the same amount of material in each of those tubes, right? There might be the same amount of liquid, but the solid material that we actually got from the plant is a different amount. So my students weighed that out and then made sure we were delivering the same amount of material in the assay and repeated it. And you can see that even though all these looked very active in our initial screening, there was kind of a range of activity when they were diluted quite a bit. So these are 20,000-fold dilute, so it's very, the component might be very active at killing these cells, is kind of the conclusion here. And we looked in the data for a trend that fit this same description. So we would expect more of the material in the C9 fraction than in the C14. And when we look back at our chromatography, you can see that there are several peaks, specifically a prominent one that comes out at about 23 minutes here in our separation. And that is much more abundant in the more active fractions. So we've narrowed this down from about 400 compounds in our initial extracts. That 400 is a narrowing down from thousands, right? So thousands to 400 to about 40 or 50 to, there's still many smaller peaks there, but we have a list of about a dozen lead compounds that we're gonna follow up on and try to separate out. You might be wondering, how do we know what something is at that point? We need to either make it through our colleagues and the organic chemists in the department, or buy it or separate it out and run additional tests. So here's one such standard. This is the most abundant compound in Radula. It's probably not the active component though. And if we don't know what a compound is, we look for guesses based on computer predictions. So you just ask the computer, what does this look like in all the chemicals that any chemist has ever talked about in the literature? Sometimes it tells you things that you're pretty sure it's not that, but you might have a starting point. So this would be a bad match. And then other times you get a good match, so then we can test this material further if this is one of the active compounds.
Yeah, so I guess we'll wrap things up here. So one of the points of emphasis was the interdisciplinary interactions between the two laboratories. And so one of the next biggest hurdle from the scientific standpoint is, does this particular extract kill normal cells, healthy cells, other cells that are found in the human body? And if it does, that's a little bit problematic, because the last thing you want to do is, it kills out all cells, so we don't want to do that. So that's the next experiments that we set up. We just set them up yesterday. We just pulled cells out of culture, so they are cooking right now. From sort of the funding standpoint, Jacob Cortez is a perfect example of the interdisciplinary collaboration. Student driven. He asked the question, we could answer the question, but particularly of interest is the fact that he has really separated himself from his peers. He's currently getting a master's degree in chemistry down in Houston, but he also took a job in a laboratory that is identifying compounds from an immunobiology lab, and he's doing the cell culture techniques simultaneously. So it's really the chemical purification side, it's the cell culture side from the laboratory that diversified his skills, that made him far more competitive for that particular position. So the position is not typically filled with basically someone coming out only from an undergraduate degree. So it's really, kudos to him for initiating the conversation and really following through on it. but it's really separated him from his peers as far as getting his job. In addition to sort of that major point, the funding mechanisms that are in place to allow students to work in the laboratory is imperative for us. We have the Freshman Fellows McNair's programs. We get those students young before they learn all the bad habits. We try to teach them the good habits right from the start. But to have them for 4 years, or 5 years, depending on the student, but to have them for 4 years instead of, we often get students their junior or senior year saying, I'm applying to medical school, I need something now. And by the time you train them, just about the time they get proficient in the laboratory, they go off and graduate. So getting those students early, having those mechanisms in place early is really important for our work.
Yeah, and I'd add just a couple things on both sides to that. One, on the scientific side, we can use like what we know about some of these lead compounds. So some of them have been explored for activity in human systems before. A couple of them had been patented for other conditions not related to cancer. So that it looks like we may have happened on some very useful compounds, but it is still very preliminary, like Dr. Jennings said. We don't know many things. We haven't narrowed it down to a specific substance here. So there's still a lot of work to do. The interdisciplinary nature can't be overstated. This is two pretty distinct sets of training that the students are getting, and the project wouldn't be possible without either set of training. And then for the support, it's good to get the students early in their academic career, but one challenge is sometimes continuing funding and the support for the student over all 4 years so that there's continuity in the research. So sometimes you'll get a freshman fellow, but then there won't be support for them, say, that summer after their freshman year, or maybe they'll have time in their schedule that winter, but there won't be funding. And actually what made this really successful is I had gotten an internal grant and I had set aside some of that money to pay students for their hours in the lab, which at least in the chemistry department at Northern is less common. And that can be a barrier for entry for some students to research. So the funding component can't be overstated. I think that's everything. Yeah. Yeah.
So I just have a question.
Yeah.
So how long from the time that you decided to test this radula till the time that you got to these slides?
So I had been thinking about radula, the plant, from like when I was applying for this job. I started here in 2019. We started looking at radula in our lab around 2020. I believe, when did Jacob do the initial experiment? Was that 2022?
22.
So we've actually moved pretty quickly over the summer. Yeah.
Yeah, both Ryan and Brennan spent the entire summer between the two labs.
This is awesome.
Yeah.
Maybe one other question. This is great work. So does this ever feed up to a national database on research? How does this link with the industry?
Well, I mean, so if we were to get definitive results with this, we could publish the work, and that would be how that would be communicated to
and
broader
both Ryan and Brennan went to a conference this year and presented this data from the summer.
Oh yeah.
And so that dissemination, those mechanisms are out there, and
so that was the Phytochemical Society of North America. I went with them and I gave a talk on our medicinal plant chemistry program and how we've been working with a field station out in Chatham to teach the students about hemp. But yeah, they had a good experience. There were not many undergraduate students at that conference too. So this is really great work out of an undergraduate student.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you.
You know, two things, and they won't involve chemistry. My high school chemistry is a little challenged here today. But one is I want to compliment you on the fact that I think this is one of our selling points for Northern, is that undergraduates are getting graduate level experiences in your programs. I mean, this would not happen in some of our other universities, and so I compliment you on that. I'm curious, you referenced a student going on to get a master's degree. To get a job in this field, plant chemistry, can you get out with a bachelor's degree and find a job, or do you have to go on to a further graduate degree too?
Yeah, it does depend on what you want to do. So we place students from the medicinal plant chemistry program into testing labs. So testing in the Food and Drug Administration regulated space, the U.S. Department of Agriculture regulated space, Environmental Protection Agency regulated space. Here in Michigan, the Cannabis Regulatory Agency, that kind of testing. So those testing labs, the students are getting those positions right out of undergraduate, and also in some manufacturing spaces in those industries as well. For some, to kind of move up the totem pole on that, in those industries, you have to probably get a master's degree at least. And if you were going to kind of pursue this kind of research, it would be a master's or a PhD. Yeah.
Anyone else? Well, thank you. This has been really interesting and great work, and we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And that's all we have. So we're going to adjourn the meeting, and we will reconvene at 9:50.
All right. Thank you.
Cure cancer. Oh, we got a little break.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. We're going to pick up with our agenda, starting with agenda item 6, and that's a special recognition that I would like to indulge by trustees for 1 second. Want to recognize somebody, and that's our athletic director, Rick Comley. And he has been selected and now inducted into the Michigan Sports Hall of Fame. I think he was inducted last night at a ceremony down in Lansing. And he's not here, but he will be here tonight for the Sports Hall of Fame ceremonies. But he's one of 10 people that were inducted into the Sports Hall of Fame last night. And here's some of the people that were in this class that he was inducted with is former Detroit Piston Rip Hamilton, Red Wings superstar Henrik Zetterberg, NFL greats Lorenzo White and Lamar Woodley, and last but not least, Mrs. Hockey, Colleen Howe. So that's pretty good company Rick was in last night. And he's had many accomplishments, as many of you know, that are local here. But there's one that stood out to me when I was looking at all the stuff he's done over his career. And that is coaching 2 different schools to NCAA championships in hockey. He did that in 1991 here at NMU. And then he followed that up down at MSU in 2007. And there's only 2 other coaches beside him that have done that in the history of college hockey. It's an amazing feat, and obviously he's an amazing guy, and we're lucky to have him as our AD. And I think often of the story when our AD left Forrest Lewis, and they decided to give Rick a call, see if he would fill in as our interim athletic director. And Kerry Schuling was president at the time, and Gavin Leach gave him a call. And he was on his way back from Wisconsin or someplace. I don't know where he was. He was in the car with his wife. And so they broached the subject with Rick, and without hesitating, he said, yes, I'll do it. And so they were kind of taken aback because he just said, yeah, I'll do it. He didn't check with his wife who was in the car. So I don't know how that went after. But so this was on like a Thursday, I think. And so Gavin says, well, when can you start? He says, I can start tomorrow. And so that's the kind of guy he is, and he's been with us since then, and is going to be with us for a little while longer yet as our AD. And like I said, we're going to more fully recognize him and his accomplishments tonight at the NMU Sports Hall of Fame induction. So hopefully you get a chance to congratulate him tonight. So thanks.
Steve, pretty cool. I thought maybe you were going to introduce one of our special guests sitting in the audience also.
Well, yeah, I'm going to do that. I'll do that later, so. Thank you, though. Okay, item 7 on the agenda is individual request to address the board. Secretary Andrew, do we have any requests?
We do not.
Good. Item 8 is our moment in NMU history. Dr. Russ Minyagi. Russ, it's good to see you again. Thank you. Thanks.
Oh,
okay. This morning my topic is bringing the world to Northern. This is working? Yes? Okay. Over the last century, Northern Michigan University has been a promoter of programs which open the world to students and to the Marquette community on the far shores of Lake Superior. The process has evolved. First, there was a concept of assembly for students. Superintendent of Public Instruction, Dallas Fall, and President Kay were concerned about the character development of future teachers. In late 1904, Fall told principals, later called presidents, of the normal schools, I consider the religious exercise to be important, and more especially in a school for training of teachers. As a result, Northern's assembly program was called Chapel for several years. As late as 1932, assembly continued to be referred to as Chapel Hour, and missing Missing assembly was considered similar to missing Sunday services. When the assemblies were held on a biweekly basis, classes and offices were closed. They became voluntary in 1936-37 and were described as a course of musical entertainments and lectures open to students and to the public. 9 years later, students were encouraged to keep 9:50 a.m. on Monday free in order to take advantage of, quote, the broad cultural enrichment afforded by these programs. It was also seen as a time when the entire university community could come together, which it rarely did as the student population grew. Over the years, a variety of programs were presented. Some, like Harry Carmen's, who was the world's greatest mentalist, gave a program. In 1942, John Moyer presented museum techniques focusing on taxidermy. The Phi Ed department presented a dancing program while newsman Orrin Kay told of his World War II experiences. In 1945, the noted black poet Langston Hughes read his critical poetry about black life. There were also music presentations by faculty and students. In 1946, Rudolph Ganz of the Chicago Music College gave a classical music concert. The Chicago Symphony String Ensemble, the Don Cossack Chorus, opera baritone, senators, and famous Americans like Norman Thomas appeared on Northern Stage. For 1959, John Homer presented Afro-Asian People United. Eleanor Roosevelt was a speaker, as was Kurt von Schuschnigg, Austrian chancellor driven from office by the Nazis. While in 1968, the Four Tops, a popular black singing group, was on the stage. At another time, Louis Armstrong was guest of the university. Despite these performers, by the late 1940s, there were mixed reactions, with some students feeling they were a waste of time, and a decade later there was poor attendance. In the early 1950s, Marquette Community Concert Series was established and proved to be popular as the Assembly Series declined in popularity. As late as 1968-69, the University Bulletin listed a lecture concert series which was available to students to, quote, provide opportunities for experience in a variety of cultural and educational programs. A number of programs operated on campus, bringing fine entertainment and speakers to campus. There was the McGough Distinguished Lecture Series, existed from 1978 to 1988. Two distinguished speakers were former President Gerald R. Ford and former Secretary of State Alexander Haig. In the decade of the 90s, this tradition continued. In 1986, the Michigan legislature created the Martin Luther King Jr. Cesar Chavez Rosa Parks initiative, which brought numerous minority speakers to campus, such as Cesar Chavez and the leading Native American intellectual of the 20th century, Vine Deloria Jr. Platform personalities sponsored speakers and entertainment, as did Performing Arts Series 1990 under the direction of Wayne Francis, that attracted entertainment. In the 21st century, musical performances are brought to campus by Dan Truckee, director of the Beaumier Heritage Center. However, unfortunately, the former rich cultural programs for the campus and community has all but ended, and this is focused primarily. We have musical groups, but we don't have speakers really coming to campus. I leave with the question: where did the money come from for all of this that went from almost the origins of Northern for over 100 years? That I've never been able to figure out. But anyway, that's Assembly.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. I would just also point out that Dr. Minyagi did a great article in Rural Insights about the history of the Marquette General Hospital. So if you got some time, it's a great read. It traces it all the way back from the very beginning to where it is now. So it's thank you, Doctor. Okay, our next item is our ASNMU update, and I believe the ASNMU President Gwen Feemster. Nope, there she is.
Good morning. How are you? Hi, Gwen. All right. Good morning. Thank you for having me. My name is Gwen Feemster. I'm the president of ASNMU for this upcoming school year, and I'm here to kind of tell you a little bit of what ASNMU has done over the summer and what we will be doing for the next year. So we're still working on recruitment. Our first meeting of the year is actually today at 3:30, so that's really exciting. We got 187 names after fall orientation, or summer orientation, and fall fest. Hoping to get a few from there. We have some pending applications and appointments. Super thrilling, because if you look at our numbers, we're doing actually pretty okay, but we always love to have more representatives. Right now we are sitting at 2 in academic affairs, 5 in student affairs, and we do have a judiciary branch of 3. All right, so this is the big thing that we're going to be looking at today in our meeting. Students don't really want to raise tuitions or fees. However, for the past 2 years, they have been discussing the student activity fee. That's the fee. We pay $37.12 every single semester, and that goes towards concerts, events, very fitting after the last presentation. That goes towards speakers, events such as homecoming, mocktails on campus, ice skating at the Lakeview Arena, and it funds 6 different student groups, along with giving funding to the Student Finance Committee, which can fund any other student organization. Every 2 years, we have the opportunity to put it on our April ballot. That has to be done by the 4th week of the fall semester, which is today. So we are going to be discussing that today at our meeting to potentially put it on the ballot, allowing students to vote whether they want to raise it or not. This is in response to raising entertainment costs, requests from these student-funded groups, requests from students for just more popular artists and speakers, and also good old inflation. Our regional counterparts, Michigan Tech has 2 student activity fees that are about $159 a semester, and then Lake Superior State's is about $80 a semester. So with $37.12, we're not really able to compete with our counterparts in the region. Again, just want to put this on the ballot to let students decide. Don't really know what we're going to be asking to raise it to. We're going to do some informal surveying on campus because we want students to decide it, and so they can actually pass it. Our grad gown program is very successful. We officially have over 100 gowns that we rent for free for students, so they don't have to pay for a gown just to walk at graduation. And we just got a bunch of donations from commencement in May as well, so that's very thrilling. We've also started this Uper Light program over the summer. We took it over from the Center for Student Enrichment, but essentially we have 24 different UV black lights that students are able to rent out and go find Uper lights on the beaches to promote just student organizations, meeting people, and overall it's a great time. ASNMU, we have hosted a program and it sold out on the hub, and we actually had to turn people away because it was so successful. And that says 2 groups, but I've been made aware that 4 groups have already utilized this 4 weeks into the school year. Because this is our first meeting today, we haven't really gotten to start on any of our plans for the year, but me and Micah have been discussing this stuff all over the summer, and we're excited to work on this stuff throughout the year. Firstly, we want to work on diversity and inclusion. We want to work on outreach and getting involved with the diversity organizations on campus to be a more diverse campus community. We're potentially looking at hosting a forum or conference that we can have for students just so that they can learn about different diversity topics and also that those diversity groups have a place to speak. We're still going to be looking at dining, promoting more inclusive options for students. As someone who didn't eat meat, this was a struggle for me for the past few years. So I'm very passionate about this subject to hopefully make our dining more inclusive and more welcome for those who are vegan, vegetarian, gluten-free, etc. and whatnot. We're excited to continue improving resources for the mental health areas on campus. We're very excited about the Okanagan Charter and everything that Abigail Weiss has done with her team. And we're excited to get that word out and talk to students to improve confidence in all of those resources. We're looking at potentially relocating our career closet. That's also going to be a discussion for today. Our career closet allows students to they get a free professional outfit every semester from us. So if they have an internship or an interview and they might not be able to afford or find a professional outfit, we can give them one for free. Another one of our more successful programs, we're looking at relocating it in Hedgecock. So having it closer to students, as it's currently in Grease Hall and not a lot of student traffic in Grease Hall, and we want students to be able to utilize this service. We're excited to continue transparency and outreach. We're grateful that our relationships with the trustees, with Dr. Tessman, and other faculty have been positive, and we're excited to continue that. We're also looking to continue that with the students, meeting with different student organizations, making sure that the students know who their student government is and that we're there for them so we can accurately represent them. Lastly, we're looking forward to discussing the housing crisis in Marquette. I know this is not a new topic, but students are seriously struggling with finding places to live. So we're excited about having conversations about potentially improving student housing on campus, but also helping students find housing in Marquette, because we all know that that's a big struggle, especially finding affordable housing. That's all I have for you. Thank you for having me. And if there are any questions ever, this is my email, and Micah Benjamin is going to be the vice president this year. So that's his information. Thank you.
See if there's any questions here, Gwen.
Perfect.
Sure, Gwen, quick question. You mentioned recruitment, and it sounds like you had great turnout and interest at Fall Fest. Is there a certain number of people you're hoping to add? Are you kind of wide open, or anything in particular you guys are kind of focusing on?
I'm aiming for 5.
Okay.
Which it seems like not a lot when you are looking at 187 and sign up, but ASMU is a commitment. It's a time commitment. So I'd be so happy with 5. I believe we have 14 open positions. But that also includes like quad 1 positions, which we don't really have quad 1 anymore. So we have to update our guiding documents.
That's it. Thank you, Gwen. Appreciate it very much. Good presentation.
Thanks, Gwen.
Okay, we'll move on to item 10 on the agenda, and that's our staff update. And I believe Andy Hill is here. So.
I am here.
All right, here we are. Thank you and welcome.
I can sit at the front.
Oh, yeah.
I can sit at the front. Well, thank you, trustees. Thank you, administration, for the opportunity to speak with you this morning. Thank you also for your service and ongoing commitment to the university, its students, and its employees. I am Andy Hill. I'm a staff member with the NMU Foundation, but I'm also the president of UAW Local 2178, representing over 230 administrative professionals who work here at NMU. I'm also serving as a steward for UAW Local 1950, as well as the ASME group, a diverse group of employees who all keep the multifunctions and operations of the university always moving forward. It is fitting to be here this morning because it's homecoming. This annual event comes together each year because of staff who plan the events and everything that's going to happen throughout the week and weekend, and those who prepared campus for all the alumni and visitors who are coming back to celebrate and be with us. Everyone working together to ensure homecoming celebrations continue as they have in the past, building on traditions and maybe starting a few new ones along the way. Working together is the theme of my brief update that I want to share with you. 2 examples of how unionized staff are working together with administration. Example number 1, and I told Rhea the other day that I was going to call her out, but this summer Rhea in HR, Rhea Deaver, reached out to staff leadership in an effort to put together more attention in building out a staff professional program. And really this is just the start of a conversation, and really excited to be a part of it. So we had our first meeting. They wanted to help us, well, they wanted us to help them put together a survey to speak to staff about their various training needs. This survey has been completed, and really looking forward to the next step, and that's coming together to review some of the results and what they learned from the survey, and then moving things from there. The second example is Staff Labor Council. Together, UAW 2178, UAW Local 1950, and ASME just established the first ever Staff Labor Council. The function of the council is to expand opportunities to collaborate and collectively address matters of staff labor concern and speak together with administration to explore new solutions to issues that we are seeing. Dr. Tessman has supported this initiative, and really since his arrival, we've been meeting as staff leaders with him as a simple way to check in and talk about what's happening in our respective areas. To wrap up, staff will continue to be available to you. I'm only president until May, so I can only make that promise until May. So you got till May, or you had my attention until May. But please continue to invite us to the table. We will be there for you. We will be a partner. So let's keep working together on staff issues, and thank you again for allowing me to speak with you today.
Thanks, Andy. We'll see if there's any questions. Anybody? Wow, great.
All right.
Thank you
again.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Andy.
it. I got a bus, but I'll.
We're gonna do that now. Okay.
First time we've done it.
Okay, we will move on to item 11, which is the President's Report. Dr. Tessman.
All right. Thanks, Mr. Chair and members of the board. Really great today to hear from Jamie Crabb and Gwen Feemster and Andy Hill. We have this kind of now triad of updates from our different major stakeholder groups, and that I think is a really positive thing. I have a list of things on the sheet in front of me. You have this in your packet as well, and so what I'll do is just touch some of the high points as part of my President's Report. I'm certainly happy to answer questions after the meeting or after my brief remarks if you like. I would be remiss if I didn't kind of note that yesterday and now today and then later on this afternoon, we're really going to hear, we have heard and we'll hear presentations that illustrate the breadth of Northern Michigan University. So we just finished hearing a little while ago about a very high level, mostly over my head, research enterprise across different disciplines to world-class faculty working with students, but very kind of high level, very academic bench research. Later on today, we'll have a chance to rededicate the Jacobetti complex, and we know all of the workforce development and trades education and short-term credentialing and associate's degrees that are offered through the Jacobetti complex, all of our engineering tech programs. Yesterday, we had some informal conversation with student representatives from EcoReps, and they're earning academic credit through internship programs in the Shine Institute at Northern. And it's just very rare to see a university capture all of those different educational opportunities. It's something that makes Northern special. What makes it possible? Really, it is about human beings. And I'm going to segue into our enrollment report by focusing on the people that are making success possible at Northern. Really happy Joe Lubig did a better job than I could ever do. Jeff Corpy did a great job talking about the stories behind the numbers. And as I go through our positive enrollment news, you've got to know that it is certainly our admissions teams, our orientation staff at the center of it, but so many staff and faculty and alumni, for that matter, who really work hard in order to bring students to NMU. Overall, as has been noted, our enrollment is up this fall, and up by a very healthy amount. Throughout the spring and in the summer, we were seeing a major increase in our kind of first-time freshman pipeline. So it was no surprise to see those numbers so strong as we headed into Census Day earlier this week. But on top of those numbers, what we really saw was this influx of global campus students, some graduate students, a lot of students through the Applied Workplace Leadership Program that Joe Lubig mentioned,
And what that did is it got us from a place where we had very positive first year news to a place where overall, through the transfer population through Global Campus, we saw overall enrollment tick up. And I have some more detailed information there. It's something that sets Northern apart. 5 of the 15 universities in Michigan are seeing an overall increase in enrollment, which is a very positive thing. But I say that to point out that what's happening at Northern is something that's a bit distinct. And I think that a number of people deserve a lot of credit for that. I can answer more questions about overall enrollment later, but I don't want to forget that key to our overall enrollment is our retention and persistence. It's one thing for Northern to be an open access institution, to work individually with students like the student that, well, I think Jeff, you discussed her GPA and kind of initial application. We work individually to bring students in. We've got to make sure we get as many of those students through to the finish line. And so this year we saw a very significant uptick in our first year retention rate, and a lot of credit goes to our advisors, Neil Baumgartner, and of course Chris Greer for that important work. None of the enrollment picture is complete without progress in that direction. So I can answer more questions on that front later. I did want to give you an update on one of the tools that we implemented this past spring to get more students to Northern, and particularly to get students to Northern who needed a kind of help on that final mile financially. Students who were eligible for the Michigan Achievement Scholarship, which is a fantastic program, and the Pell Grant, which is another fantastic program, but still didn't get all of the way to the finish line in terms of tuition and fees. And so the Tuition Advantage program was designed to tell those students, look, if it's $500 or $800 or $1,500, we're going to cover that last mile for you and get you to Northern. And we saw numbers at the end of the day that exceeded our expectations. We kind of pictured 35 to 40 students who would end up coming to Northern through the Tuition Advantage program. And at the end of the day, we ended up with 56 students, about a third UP, about 2/3 downstate. You can look at the numbers. The average award is a little under $1,000. So it's a very efficient way for us to get these students to Northern. It makes a huge difference to those students. If you've been in those, you can put yourself back in your student shoes. $500, $800 may not seem like a huge deal to us thinking about the budgets we talk about here, but for a student, $500 may as well be $5 million at some points in their life. So it's a big difference maker. And the quality of the students we're bringing in is quite high. You can see the GPA over 3.0 for those students. So really proud there. The third point, and kind of beginning to wrap up now, but I don't want to gloss over this. We had a major restructuring of the university in the spring, at least from the administrative side of things. And we developed this 5-pillar structure. And I think we're seeing lots of dividends from that reorganization already. However, really we want to focus on next steps. I asked each of the pillar leads, Chris Greer in Student Affairs and Success, Jeff Corpy in Student Experience, Gavin Leach in Finance and Administration, Rhea Deaver in People, Culture, and Wellbeing, and Dale Kapla in Academic Affairs, to design a major project that is not a 5-year project, but is a kind of this year project. And again, any of those pillar leads or myself can answer questions if you have them. But Dale in Academic Affairs is implementing a Campus for All project that's really about accessibility on campus. First phase, kind of an inventory of ADA, kind of physical accessibility around campus, but also phases 2 and 3 later on if you have questions for Dale. Gavin Leach, in his many hats and many projects, is really going to focus on all of the campus development that we have underway and make sure that it is sustainability oriented, reducing square footage, energy efficient, and student centered. Hardin Hall, the redesign there has many exciting elements. One of them will be the redesign of the ground floor for more of a student union space. Jeff Corpy, again, we just went to the mat on this because he said, look, I've really got to have more than one project, and he does, but I made him choose one. And so Jeff is going to really focus on engaging that commuter student population. So these are students, not always students who graduated locally, but many times students from Gwen or Ishpeming, Negaunee, the area, who absolutely need to have that same kind of exceptional student experience, the sense of home on campus that our residential students have. And so I'm excited to see the results of that. You heard Andy Hill mention his happiness with the professional development, career development work that Ria Deaver has launched, and I think that there's much more work to do there, and excited to see that as a major project. Chris Greer, perhaps the biggest project of all, really building on some earlier philosophies that Chris had supported and had been in place and germinating. Some of the philosophies ultimately that the board supported in 2019 with its initiative in redesigning our advising system around kind of holistic advising, where there's academic advising occurring, but also kind of relationship building and the ability of advisors to spot some early risk indicators and work with our students in a more holistic way. Again, more detail there I can share, but that's absolutely crucial for our students and at the end of the day for enrollment and budget. I'll share one of the other major highlights on the list of 10. And it is because it dovetails nicely with the faculty presentation you saw. It is constantly a source of pride. I learn more and more every day about the excellence that exists on the research side of things at NMU. And I would be remiss if I tried to run through the full list because I couldn't get there. It's a long list of research excellence. But in addition to the work happening that you heard about this morning, just recently we had, an NSF grant, which is sort of like the gold standard for external funding from the federal government. An NSF grant to our Department of Psychological Sciences, not their first, but a recent big one. Around EEG instrumentation, basically a $500,000 grant. The PI on that was Dr. Joshua Carlson. And again, just demonstrating the range of Northern, to have faculty who are working on the ground with students to get them through a financial emergency or, kind of move them forward with course registration. Also national or global players in their own research field. There are many more items. I'll cut myself off there, but certainly Chair Young, invite any questions that you might have.
Thank you, President Tessman. Any questions? This group is quiet this morning. What's going on after that break?
We covered this already a little bit at our meeting the other night, but the Mackinac Island visit was very successful, and perhaps other people would like to hear a little about that.
Very successful. About a month ago now, NMU, sounds kind of aggressive, but we took over the island. We really did. We took over the island. And what started last year, I want to give Coach Mike Lozier a lot of credit here, but Coach Lozier and a few others worked to host a volleyball game last year on Mackinac Island, first ever collegiate competition on the island. This year, because we're entrepreneurs at Northern and we sense opportunity, Coach Lozier teamed up with the women's soccer team with Bill Dignite. Once you hand something to Bill Dignite, you never know where it will go, but you know it'll be exciting and good. And so the NMU Theater and Dance program got involved, and we worked with hotels on the island, vendors on the island, really to bring in not only our student athletes and their parents, but some alumni, some others connected to the university, and host a couple of theater performances, a couple of athletic competitions, and just fly the green and gold on that island. And I stepped off the ferry and I felt kind of the green and gold running through the island, all the way down to at Reba's Fudge Shop. We had Wildcat Willie Gold Rush Fudge there. And I'll tell you, it sounds like it's fluff. It's not. I mean, there are well over 1 million visitors to that island every summer. Felt like all 1 million were there that weekend, and they saw NMU represented. And so our task, that's why I shared with y'all informally, our task now is to say, okay, what's next for that program, and see what we can get out of that weekend. It's an amazing opportunity, but retain the kind of improv fun nature, because that's what really made it special. So we'll have a follow-up meeting fairly shortly and think about 2024 on the island. Thanks.
And it was a long-term effect. I was happened to be on the island a couple of weeks later, and people were still talking about Northern being there. I happened to be wearing my Northern stuff, and they, so it was amazing.
Absolutely.
It's cool. Anything else for Brock? Thank you. Thanks. Thank you. Okay. The next one is item 12 is committee reports. I call on Trustee Fattanti to give us a report on her recent committee meeting.
An Academic Affairs Committee meeting of the Board of Trustees of Northern Michigan University was held on September 15th, 2023. The meeting was convened at 9:09 a.m. by myself. Present were myself, trustees Steve Lindberg, Greg Sepinen, and Greg Toutant. Chair of the Board of Trustees Steve Young, ex officio, and Dr. Brock Tessman, president and ex officio. The committee received informational reports and presentations on the following: Academic Senate, Dr. Jamie Crabb, Chair of the Academic Senate, provided an update on Senate activities. Charter Schools, Dr. Casey Holder, Charter Schools Officer, gave the committee an update on charter schools. Interdisciplinary collaboration between the UMBTC and Medicinal Plant Chemistry, Dr. Alex Wilson, Chemistry, and Dr. Matt Jennings, School of Clinical Sciences, gave a presentation on the collaboration between the Upper Michigan Brain Tumor Center and Medicinal Plant Chemistry. The meeting adjourned at 9:41 a.m.
Excellent. Thank you. And it was a great meeting. That presentation on the chemistry stuff was amazing. Item 13 on our agenda is our meeting dates for 2024, and I'd like to call on Trustee Hart at this time.
Thank you, Chair Young. I would like to move that the following dates be the meeting schedule for the Northern Michigan Board of Trustees for calendar year 2024. The first date would be Thursday, February 15th and Friday, February 16th. The next date would be Thursday, May 2nd and Friday, May 3rd. The third date would be our retreat, which is Thursday, July 18th and Friday, July 19th. The fourth dates would be Thursday, September 19th, Friday, September 20th. And the final board meeting would be Thursday, December 12th and Friday, December 13th.
Thank you, Vice Chair Hart. That was in the form of a motion, so is there a
So
second?
Support.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. The next item is item 14, which is our formal action on our formal recommendations. And would call for a motion and a second to approve the formals.
I'll make a motion, we approve the formal recommendations as presented.
Great.
A second.
Second, okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Item 15 is our informal / closed session announcement, and I call on President Tessman.
Yep, Chair Young, I'd like to announce that the NMU Board of Trustees will hold a closed session in conjunction with the Thursday and Friday, December 14th and 15th, 2023 meetings of the board.
Thank you, President Tessman. Okay, we're now down to item 16. And item 16 is our good of the order, where we go through and everybody gets a chance to kind of say whatever's on their mind as we wrap up today's meeting. And we do this, we start with the vice chair, and then we go with least seniority to most seniority in that order. So I would call on...
No, most seniority.
No, least, as we start. It ends.
Any direction the chair wants to go.
Right.
That's right.
That sounds, yeah.
Anyways, whatever, we're gonna, she's gonna go first and then we'll go over here.
Yeah.
Super.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay, Vice Chair.
All right, thank you, Steve. It has been a quiet group today. I think for a lot of us, though, there's just so many great things that we're hearing about and listening to that I know for me, just taking it all in. One thing I wrote down, and there's just such a strong theme that's come up in almost every presentation we've heard today, in addition to the activities and things that we've gotten to do over the past couple days, and that's this theme of collaboration and innovation. Whether it be the strategic partnerships, which is incredibly exciting. This is something that it's nice, having been on the board for 7 years now, to see a lot of these things really come to fruition. You can see it in the research that we're doing. There's just really this, it just feels a lot less siloed. And you're hearing about, outreach and connections being made all over the place, even down to the union administration efforts, looking at development opportunities, et cetera. When we talk about innovation, the tuition advantage program that you spoke about, President Tessman, is fantastic. And, it's been here, I think, 8 months? So I'm just continually looking to see all of the wonderful things that are going to take place. Just reiterating, enrollment at 3.5%, I think, is the number that we've got right now. I mean, it's shocking in a wonderful way. And there are so many people, I don't think anyone's not touched that number in one way, shape, or form with their efforts. The new strategic pillars and taking this more holistic and human-centric approach to our students on campus, I think is really moving the needle. So I'm just incredibly excited. And again, you can feel kind of a culture shift. I know that with the restructuring, a lot of people were maybe kicked out of their comfort zones a little bit. And it's just wonderful to also see people kind of flourish within that and be innovative and have this renewed excitement. So homecoming tomorrow, go Cats.
Trustee Fattanti?
I just wrote down a couple things. One was just happy to see and feel the positive energy and excitement on campus. And yesterday, it was really great to hear from the 3 members of the Eco Reps and all the good work and they're doing on campus and the community. And then walking over to lunch, I think Trustee Holmquist and I were saying, these students just have such more of a purpose and they're so much more mature, I feel, than especially when I went to school. Trustee Holmquist is a lot younger than me, but it was great to see it. They're just doing such great work. And then the lunch yesterday at the Northern Lights, I hope we continue to do that because it was great to sit and talk with the students. We had some, it was the public TV and the media, North Wind that I was sitting next to. They were just great kids. It was wonderful just to sit with them and talk about what they're doing at Northern. And the one other thing I would say is I'm just really looking forward to this afternoon and going over to the new Jacobetti complex and see how it looks now and what they're doing over there.
Thank you, Trustee Fattanti, and you guys were right. I start hearing going. It's hard to get good help these days. Trustee Seven.
So it's going to be short because now I'm at the front of the line on this.
You are.
I just have to say, and I think my 2 predecessors already kind of indicated all the positives, but I'm overwhelmed with all the extremely good news from what the foundation told us yesterday. To what we see with enrollment, with the School of Education. The list just goes on and on and on. This is faculty, staff, Brock. It's going to be hard to beat the next meeting we come because expectations are going to be really high, but this has been a really upbeat and very successful start to the year. And go Cats.
Thank you. Trustee Holmquist?
Yes, I feel like I'm going to echo a lot of the same comments. I'll be brief as well. But you were right, Lisa. Yesterday when we were walking over to lunch and just hearing I love hearing from the students. Sorry guys, that's my favorite part is hearing what's going on directly from them on campus and all the activities and clubs and opportunities and the excitement you can feel here on campus. I told Lisa, I said, oh my gosh, I feel like I wasted my years in college now looking at just how passionate and just committed these students are to their different areas that they have interests in. But it was so exciting to hear from everyone. I had an opportunity to stop by Fall Fest during the first week of school and just so many students about so many organizations and students being engaged and stopping and talking to so many different people. So I'm very excited to see what's going to happen here and into the future. Of course, we always talk about enrollment, which is exciting, but I think what's even more exciting to me is hearing about all the different programs and the things that we're dovetailing together here to really support those students now that we have them here. I don't think I could have said it better. $500 to a student may as well be $5 million depending on their situation. So I want to make sure that we are like working hard to make sure that they're successful. So some of the pillar projects you were talking about, I'd love to hear more about. I know the advising area and all the supports we do through that. Engaging commuter students I think is so critically important. So excited to hear more about what's happening in those projects. And then also Dave Nyberg talking about the community partnerships, and I think there's so much opportunity there with our students and really giving them real world experience and working with some of our community partners and organizations here that I think would love to be more involved with Northern. So it's really exciting to see everything that's on the horizon, and I agree, go Cats. Should be a good game on Saturday.
Thank you, Trustee LaPointe Dunham.
Well, she said it all. I was super impressed with our representation on the Growing Michigan Council with Dave Nyberg, and then also with the Talent Together Network with Joe Lubig. I mean, like you said, I don't think we could have better fits for either of those councils and networks. So great to hear the good news on that. And just the theme, collaboration, innovation, this opportunity has just resonated throughout the 2 days here. I was having a conversation with one of the students, and she worked for the SEEC, and she said she was a little hesitant about graduating and moving on outside of the NMU community. So I just told her, I'm like, it's a very accepting community, and there's things in place that are going to build that, and that's exactly that, that business industry strategic partnership thing. I think that's going to help a lot of students kind of get to know the community more after NMU. So. Other than that, I mean, great time.
Thank you. Trustee Lindbergh.
I have to, everything that my colleague said, I was going to say. I mean, the best experience that I have on campus when I'm here is the interaction with the students. And you've said it all. I also had the opportunity last night to talk to a couple of former graduates, our alumni, and it's homecoming week. Who have been very successful, and and they repeated their stories, much like we were hearing today. One person who came to school, wasn't real successful, dropped out for a while, came back. Northern accepted him, and and he's gone on to be very successful. And so we're continuing a tradition of giving people a chance, and and as Melissa said, for some students, I love that comment. I'm going to use it again. $500 might as well be $5 million, and to make sure that we give everyone the opportunity to be here and to hopefully not be in debt up to their ears when they graduate. But it's been a wonderful 2 days.
Thank you. Trustee Toutant.
Right, it's hard to put a recap on all those good comments, and I would echo everyone's sentiments. Despite the amazing amount of strategic planning and financial stewardship and projects, we're still keeping the student experience at the heart of what's guiding the university, and that's great to see. I think that's shown through a lot of our experiences the last 2.5 days here. The one theme that I felt all the way through the presentations was about partnership, and at every level. And so the celebration last night, even in connecting NMU, the hospital project, the foundation, the city, all the community partners, and there was such a sense of that community. Hearing about the talent network, Dave Nyberg's work, the interdisciplinary work that's being done. The focus really is on partnering with one another in the community. I'll be curious, Jeff, on the commuter student experience and what that means. Again, partnerships. So I think, that really has strengthened just about everything we've done is through partnerships. The Green Fund initiative, that there's a wealth of opportunities there to bring in community partners that could help with assisting for matching funds, and there's just a world of possibilities there. So and I just want to congratulate everyone on a job well done.
Thank you. is the practice. I speak last, so and I will do a special recognition now, Greg. I do have two VIPs here with me today. Tricia Kinley, my wife, as many of you know, is up here, has been up here frequently, and comes up to enjoy all the wonderful hospitality that's offered to us when we come up. And she's my rock, and I'm happy you're here today. So, also with her is another VIP, and that's her dad, Bill Kinley from Ann Arbor. And the two of them, while I've been in meetings with you, have been sightseeing. They've done Sugarloaf, they've done Presque Isle, they've done the Jacob Eddy Complex. They did a tour there. They're doing the Superior Dome in a little bit to see that. So they've been keeping really busy, and I appreciate Brock staff making sure that they can see some of these things and taking time on homecoming weekend to do it. But Bill is probably one of the best father-in-laws that a guy could ask for. I'm very lucky. He's been a mentor to me, personally and professionally. And Bill, I appreciate you so much. And he's the first-time visitor to Marquette. It's his first time up here, first time on our campus. And he's a Wolverine, but we're making him a Wildcat. Well, he's been on and bought all the gear down there at Barnes & Noble and at the bookstore. So we're glad you're here, Bill, and hope you've enjoyed your time. He's leaving here to go to Montana to go fishing on Saturday. So we're glad he could be with us. And second thing I just want to mention is Secretary Andrew has a wedding this weekend. Her son is getting married. And even with all that going on, she's been paid tremendous attention to all the detail involved in putting this meeting on. And even though you've had a lot of people pulling and pushing for your time with that going on, so good luck with the wedding. You're probably leaving, I think, shortly to
Right
have,
after lunch.
okay.
We'll see the dust trail.
So thank you and good luck from all of us. So.
Thank you.
Okay, that's it. And I think what we do from here is we're going to have our joint meeting with the NMU Foundation, which is across the hall, right?
15 minutes.
Oh, it's in the ballroom. Okay. Yeah. At what time does that start? Is it 11? We go down there.
You go down there at 11 o'clock.
Okay. So we got a few minutes, and then we will all congregate. And there's a seating chart that you have there where you're sitting for the. Yeah, I will, but I just want to make sure. Yeah, anyway, there's a seating chart for lunch, so if there's no further business to come before the board.
I have mine.
Oh, okay, I thought I heard.
Okay, I move that we adjourn.
I couldn't figure out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I didn't know we.
I think we need to end it.